17. And I just want to say, too, that almost sounded bad. I don't mind to tell people I did a good job, but when people are begging for you to give them a compliment, that's whenever I don't like it. That's just me, I guess. But I don't mind to tell people I did a good job. I should rephrase that, I guess. Exodus 17. Chapter, or verse number 8. It says, and then Amalek fought with Israel in Rephidim, and Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men, and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses had said to him, and fought with Amalek, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass, when Moses held up his hand, that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon, and Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on the one side, and the other on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomfited, or defeated, Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar, and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi, for he said, because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. And that's all I'm going to read. And Jehovah Nissi is my banner. That's what that means. The Lord is my banner. But here we see it's kind of a unique story, that Moses goes up on a hill, and when he raises his hands, they're winning. And when his hands fell, they begin to lose. And that's kind of a mind-boggling deal. You would assume that had nothing to do with a battle between men. Physically, you would assume it has nothing to do with a battle. But right there it says they prevailed. Israel prevailed with his hands up, and Amalek prevailed with his hands down. And looking at that, if you were to look at Joshua and then you were to look at Moses, it looks like Joshua is doing all the hard work. He's the one that's fighting the battle. He's the one commanding the soldiers, and he's the one that had to go out and pick the soldiers to fight with him. He's the one going and swinging the sword and, holding his shield up, taking hits. And, he's the one expending energy, it seems. But the one that was really doing all the hard work was Moses, because he knew he had the responsibility of Israel on his shoulders, because he knew that if he let his hands down, they began to lose. He knew what he had to do. And a lot of times we look at church and we think, a preacher comes up here and he preaches his guts out and he's sweating when he gets done. And, a singer comes up here and sings till their voice is gone, and, they don't have any voice left and they can't hardly talk the next day. And, somebody testifies and they testify for 30 minutes. We think those are the people that's working hard in the church, and the people that's doing all these different ministries in the church. Those are the ones that's working hard, right? And they are. They're working real hard. But it's the ones that are praying and worshiping behind the scenes that are really doing all the hard work. And you don't see it. You don't see somebody in their prayer closet or praying, driving down the road, because I personally don't believe that the only time you can get anywhere in prayer is in a closet where you're just doing that. I think you can pray all day long and whatever you're doing, and that is effective. I'm not saying you shouldn't set aside time for just prayer, but I'm just saying don't neglect all the other hours of your day and think you can't get anything done in it. But the person that is worshiping and praising behind the scenes is the one that is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And it doesn't seem like it, but that's just the case. None of this would be None of this would be worth anything if there wasn't people praying and praising God throughout their struggles. And you know, a preacher, there's a lot of people that go to school to become a better preacher, and there is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong to polish your skills, and there's a lot of people that take singing lessons to make them a better singer, or they take piano lessons to make them a better piano player, and all that is wonderful, and I think if you want to be better at it, you should do that. But something that every single one of us can do, every single one of us can pray and we can worship, and it doesn't have to be polished, it doesn't have to be pretty sounding, you don't have to say all the right words. The only stipulation is you just have to mean what you're saying. You have to mean it, and you have to be sincere with God and be connected with God, and do it out of goodness. Don't do it because you're in a dire situation and you need help right then, or don't do it because everything's just going good, and that's just when you feel like praising is when everything's going good. And don't do it out of necessity. Do it as an everyday lifestyle. Just do it. It doesn't matter what is going on in your life. If you get to where you will pray and praise, you know, a lot of times I catch myself at work. I do a lot of walking around and making sure, you know, people are staying productive and making sure everything's kind of rolling right. And I just find myself praying, and I may not even be thinking about work at the time. I mean, you know, subconsciously I am, but I'm praying and I'm praising God for what He's done for me and who He is to me. Not necessarily just what He's done for me. I thank Him for all that too, but it's for who He is and for who He's going to be for me. Because I know that if I stay with Him and I praise Him for who He is, when I need Him to be my banner, or when I need Him to be my provider, He will be that for me. He's already promised that, and He will do it. But you do not have to be a polished or eloquent person to be a prayer warrior or to praise with your whole heart. You know, Moses, he didn't think he could lead the children of Israel because he was slow to speak. He did not think he could do it. He argued with God. But God used him, and he didn't have to be pretty, or he didn't have to have a pretty sound to him, just like you don't have to, and you don't have to be pretty either. You know, I'm not pretty at all, but you know, here I am. But God will use what you give Him. You just have to give it to Him and be a willing vessel and be willing to do whatever He asks of you. You know, raising your hands is a sign of dependence on God. It's almost like a symbolic of I'm taking my hands off the situation and I'm trusting you to do it. Has anybody been there to where they've been trying to fix something, and I'm saying a physical problem. Maybe it's a motor or just something that you were just trying to fix and you couldn't do it, and you just had to say, I got to call a mechanic. I don't know what in the world I'm doing. I've been there where I've just like, I tried, but I can't fix it. And I took my hands off the situation and just sent it to somebody else, and they fixed it like that. And I had confidence in them to fix it because they knew how to do it. They were an expert in it. And a sign of raising your hands off of all your problems, it just seems like you better fix them or else you're going under, or you better fix them or you're going to die, whatever it is. Taking your hands off of it is showing that you're dependent on God to do it, and that you have the confidence that He will do it for you. That is, you're showing the world, and you're showing God, and you're showing yourself that I know I can't do it in myself, but I know that you will do it for me. He is our banner. He will fight those battles for us. You know, when Moses, I imagine, you know, David did it whenever he came home from a battle and the whole town was burned and all the children and women were stolen and taken, and the town was talking about stoning him. David went and encouraged himself in the Lord. He went and thought back to all the times where God had moved on him and God had used him. And I'm sure Moses was doing the same thing. He thought back to whenever his mom put him in a bulrush, and God protected him from the Nile is infested with crocodiles, and God protected him from that. You know, protected a newborn infant from the current of a big river. I mean, it's just amazing that Moses even lived through all that. I know she stuck him in the reeds, but it ain't nothing for that river to get up and push him right out of there. But God protected him and then put him in the man that was trying to kill him's house But his daughter loved him so much that the man that hated his guts and hated his God had to raise up the deliverer of that nation, and that man just had to do it. He had no choice but to raise up the deliverer of Israel in his own household. And God can do that for each and every one of us. It may look like we're in hostile ground and everyone around us is just fighting against us, but God can raise you up in spite of all that to do something great for him. And whenever he went to the Red Sea and, Pharaoh's army was right behind him and it just looked like he was going to die, he raised his rod and everything parted. And the children of Israel walked through on dry ground, and when Pharaoh's army come through, the Red Sea closed. And it's amazing what God did for Moses. And I'm sure he went and thought back to all those things of what God did for him. And the few verses right before this is where Moses struck the rock and water come out of the rock. And the children of Israel were thinking about stoning Moses because they were thirsty. And, they said, what kind of God brings us out here to kill us, basically, or to let us die? There's a couple times where they did that, but Moses did not ever lose his faith or his confidence in God because he knew he depended on God, and he was a great leader because he knew that he didn't have the strength to do it, but God had the strength to do whatever he needed him to do. So naturally, though, during this, Moses is, he's raising his arms through the battle, and these battles lasted forever. They weren't just 30 minutes and then they're done. His arms got tired. His arms got tired, which, I think everybody's been, praying before, up at the front of a youth camp or something, and your arms are just tired and drooping. But it's just natural for your arms to get tired. And it's natural for you to drop your arms. But the consequence of Moses dropping his arms was the children of Israel started losing. But something amazing happens here is there's two men that see this, and what they do is they set Moses down and they decide that they'll lift his arms up for him. So they raised his arms up and they held Moses' arms up the rest of the entire day, and they just held him there for him, and the children of Israel just completely annihilated Amalek. But what I was going to get to is there's times where it seems like everything is crashing in around us. Our economy I don't know how much longer it'll last. The political system is just getting bad. There's just protests and riot. Just everything seems like it's crashing, and everything is falling apart. And that can make you tired physically. Worrying about all that can just make you tired. And everything hitting us and surrounding us can make us almost just weary in the work, almost, if that makes sense. It can make us almost just, what's the point of it anymore? Is what I'm doing, am I even making a difference? I've thought that before. Is what I'm really doing, is it really worth it? But the truth of the matter is what you're doing, it's worth it. There is a lot of people depending on you. It may not seem like it, but every single one of us should have a ministry. And I'm not saying you should have I'm not saying a Facebook page, Instagram page, and YouTube channel of your ministry, but every single person in here has a ministry somewhere, somehow. And all those people that are affected and going to be affected by it are depending on you to stay in the work. And they're depending on you to keep your hands raised, to keep your praise, to keep your prayer life. They're all depending on you to do that. And if we, as Christians, get tired and just decide we don't want to do that, we have just, our families are depending on us and we have let them down, but we've also let down all these people that need help. And that is a driving reason for me, is I look at all the people that I need to help. And I think, God, I don't ever want to get to a place to where I just want to throw in the towel. And there's times where I get that way and I have to go pray through about it, because things are bigger than just you and I. Things are a lot bigger than just you and I. I was at Easy Mart on Texas Boulevard the other day, and there was a man. They had actually locked the Easy Mark doors because he was causing some ruckus. Well, I went over there and talked to him, and he was mad at the world and mad at everybody. He was homeless, and he just hated everybody. You could see it, and he said it. So I went over to McDonald's on 82, and I went and bought him some breakfast, and I bought another guy some breakfast and brought it back to him. And I began to talk with him, and I told him, I said, you need peace in your life. And he had a devil bad, but he didn't want prayer. He actually just walked away he ran away from me. And I wasn't going to chase him down it was still early in the morning. I wasn't about to chase him down in the dark. But there was another man there that I started talking to, and I prayed for him. And but there's so many people that are depending on us, and if we're not ready to act in those situations, those two men would have never had that encounter with me. I know that man ran away from me, but I planted a seed. And the other man, I planted a seed in his life as well. But had I not been there, had I not been ready to jump into action to try to do something, they would have been unaffected, and he would have still, I don't know where he's at today, but he's better off than what he was before I met him, because I put that in his brain that he needs peace. I told him peace probably 10 times, and I tried to pray for him, and that's when he ran away. But he has that in his head, and that peace is just chipping away at that devil. He knows what he needs now. But there's times where we get tired, and we just want to drop our arms. And that's where us that have our arms raised still, we need to come up to that person, and we need to lift their arms up for them and help them. And we need to be there to encourage them and give them strength and give them what they need to go on. It was very admirable of Aaron and her to go and help their leader. Because physically, in today's climate, would the next man down have helped their leader? Or would they have maybe let him lose the battle and then blamed Moses? The people maybe stoned Moses, and then one of them gets, that is how a lot of people think, and that's how they even thought back then. But to be with your leader and to stand with him no matter what, there's going to be times where Brother Jeff gets weary. And I'm not saying that he's wrong in any way, but there are times where because he does a lot of things for this church, a ton of things. And there's times where we need to be there to lift his arms up and to help him and to push forward with him. He needs us just like we need him. If we weren't here, he wouldn't have a church to preach to. But he needs us, and we need him, and we need to be there for him just like he's there for us every time we need him. In 1 Thessalonians 5:18, it says, "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you." This doesn't say for everything give thanks. It says in everything. God's not saying give thanks for every bad thing that's happened to you. He's not saying give thanks for the sickness or disease. He's saying in everything give thanks. So no matter what's going on around you, be thankful. No matter if the walls are caving in and the walls are crashing in, thank God anyhow and say hallelujah anyhow. No matter what's going on around you, we need to be thankful, and we need to continue to keep our praise. Praise is a weapon that we can fight the devil with. And if the devil wants us to lose praise, he wants us to give up and throw in the towel. But we have to remember, in everything we need to give thanks. So no matter what the problem is, always give God thanks. God is fighting for you, and you will be victorious no matter what. God is your banner. He's your source of strength. He is the one, I don't get my strength and my drive from myself. I get everything from God. And there's people that may disagree with me, but without God, I am nothing, and I would not be 1/100th of the person I am today, and I still got room to grow. But I would be down a dark road if it was not for God, because I would have got into bad things, I'm sure. I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. But God completely changed my life. So all my strength, all my passion for anything, I attribute to God. because he's the one that gives me all my strength, and I just want to keep praising him. There's nobody to come to the piano, but if we could all stand, I'm through. But, you know, you may feel weary. Yeah, that's fine. You may feel weary, and you may feel tired. But today is a great day for you to just have your hands lifted back up, whether you can or whether you can't. You have people here. I'll be here. I think I can speak for Brother Shane. He'll be here. He wants to help you lift your arms back up. I want to see you get your praise back. And you know, I'm not saying that every time you praise, you got to go do a cartwheel, run over a pew, and run around the church. But a praise is just something that is just continually inside you that says, no matter what comes my way, is I'm going to praise God. So if we could just come today and just try to, if you have been down, if you've been fighting, just try to praise. Try to get your praise or get your praise back. Stay there until you get it back.